Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Frank and Angie's channel, Retire Earlier or Better, at home or abroad. Today we want to talk about 3 ways that most people go about living the good life, achieving the good life, working towards the good life. There's 3 ways that people go about it. One way is minimalism. Another way, a second way, is frugalism. And there's a third way, which we'll be explaining because you probably haven't heard of it, but I'm sure it'll resonate with some of you. And it's called piffy or piffier. Now, before I get into the explanations, I want to show you something. This is minimalism, this is frugalism, and this should be touching a little bit there. And this is piffy. You can see that piffy can incorporate some of minimalism and some of frugalism, but the majority of it does not. Just as some frugalism touches on piffy and some minimalism, and they can also here, these could also touch each other. Now, piffy stems from the acronym for FIRE, which is Financially Independent, Retire Early. Piffy is Professional Industrious Frugalist, Financially Independent, and Professional Industrious Frugalist, Financially Independent, Early Retired. So he can be both. He or she can be financially independent or early retired, or both. And he or she can be also working to achieve those goals. So why would somebody choose minimalist? Typically, people that choose minimalism, there's 2 different categories of minimalism: the intentional minimalist and the unintentional minimalist. The intentional minimalist would choose it for the flexibility of movement and maybe to be nomadic and to be able to travel. So the minimalist does have a can-do attitude, and he's trying to achieve something, and that is flexibility in his life. And that flexibility could be to be nomadic or to travel a lot, or even just to be more flexible, not necessarily travel, but to maybe be able to move without hindrance, without obstacles. Be able to, maybe they want to spend a year in San Francisco and then next year they want to live in Miami. So they don't want encumbrances getting in the way of that goal. So I said there's intentional and unintentional. So the intentional does it for the purpose of achieving the flexibility of movement and the freedom of movement. The unintentional has more to do with, and I'm just going to be blunt, guys, the unintentional minimalist is doing it because basically their earnings just are not quite sufficient, and they just are having a tough time financially, and this is a way to have a positive attitude about not having very much money. So it is a way of achieving mental peace for those that are unintentionally minimalist. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate people that are in that space. And it's also a way to clear the mind and declutter. A lot of them are decluttering, and they're doing this thing where they're just don't want the mental obstacles in their mind. A minimalist is someone that values freedom and flexibility over everything else, which is why you see a lot of minimalists. A lot of minimalists are single. Minimalists can be married, but minimalists typically will have challenges convincing their spouses or their family to come along on the ride of minimalism. Why would people be frugalists? The frugal person may have goals to achieve. They're trying to save for an investment. They're trying to save for FIRE, Financial Independent, Retire Early, at a later date, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, whatever it is, 20 years down the road, even 30 years down the road. The frugalist is trying to live within his means. The frugalist, generally speaking, is going to have a family and children that they're supporting, and they are trying to make sense with their situation and be able to be supportive of their family and their situation. They're also trying to achieve balance in their lives and maybe be out of debt, get out of debt. And so one way to do that would be to be frugal. Usually they're married and they have children. They're a little bit, have more responsibilities. But now the piffy or piffier is a possibility thinker. He or she is motivated also by pleasing or wanting to please his family and his spouse. And piffy likes a challenge. He's not really happy with the status quo. He's an enterprising, possibility thinking type of person. He's the type of person that is always looking for ways to optimize and maximize his life in everything he's doing, including their freedom and financial well-being, and their standard of living. So there's a difference there. The minimalist focuses on simplicity and just low stress, decluttering, and clearly simplicity and decluttering is about not having. So the focus is on having less for the purposes of building freedom of mobility, flexibility, and mental stability, just clearness of the mind. And the focus of the frugalist is living within one's means. So they're not so much focused on not having anything at all, like a minimalist. They're going to be more focused. Usually they can be single, but usually the frugalist is going to be married and with children. But a single person can also be frugal, and they're trying to live within their means, but they are still doing with less. So you see frugalists doing things like, for example, the minimalist. If you go in a minimalist closet, in his wardrobe, he might have 2 or 3 articles of clothing, whereas the frugalist might have 10 articles of clothing. The minimalist doesn't want any more clothing. The frugalist would like to have more clothing, but he makes a choice. That's a distinction I'm making here, to have less. That's why you see frugalists saying things like, I sure would like to buy a couple of extra pieces of clothing per month, but I'm being frugal. I'm trying to save up for my investment or my early retire or this or that. So that's the focus. Whereas the piffy has a can-do positive attitude. The piffy is an optimist, and the piffy is a strategist, and the piffy likes a challenge. And so the comparison would be that the piffy may have 10 articles of clothing in his wardrobe. If he wants to figure out how to have 20 articles of clothing, he'll have 20 articles of clothing. You'll never see or hear a piffy saying things like, well, I sure would like to be able to have a few extra articles of clothing per month, for this, that, or the other, but I'm saving for such and such. The piffy will never say that, because he will be able to achieve that goal and also achieve the other financial goals he's trying to achieve. So in a way, it's a step beyond being frugal. So what kind of income level are these different categories of people in? The minimalists, usually, depending on if they are intentional or unintentional. The intentional minimalist usually is going to have, you've got low income. I'm going to say that low income would be $2,000 to $3,000 a month, and this is for in the States, or I'm not sure what it would be in some of the other Western countries. But so low would be $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Medium would be $4,000 to $8,000 a month, and high would be beyond that, $10,000 a month or more. So a minimalist is typically going to be in the lower income level if he's unintentionally minimalist, but the intentional minimalist can also be at the lower level. He can be intentionally, but he really wants to be at the medium income level. So typically the minimalist will be at a low or middle. The intentional one would be at a middle income level, Usually people at really high incomes aren't attracted to minimalism. You'll see people at the high income levels that travel, but they'll do it in a very wasteful manner, not paying attention to anything, and actually pretty much boasting about how much they spend. So the frugalism income levels, usually people on a low income can be frugal, but yet usually it's a low to middle ground, somewhere between the 4,000 to 8,000 family income per month. And usually they're frugal, and that way they can achieve their goals, save for retirement, and you know, save to buy a house, save to get out of debt, and this kind of thing. Now the piffy income level, okay, so multimillionaire can be a piffy, a middle income person can be a piffy, and a low income person can be a piffy. The reason is because piffy is an attitude. It's not a prescribed way of doing things. For example, in the FIRE movement, you have these ideas that you're going to, you know, you're gonna live within your means. Maybe you can have a used car. Maybe you can ride a bicycle. Maybe you can have a small house. Whereas a piffy is like a professional chess player, and he's a strategist. And so if a piffy wants to have, say, you know, piffy can have a house with a pool. You know, a piffy can have an old car. A piffy can have several old cars. A piffy has options and strategies and opportunities. I struggle with defining piffy because he almost has no boundaries. And I say almost because I'm not trying to make it sound like he's a Superman or woman. But the piffy is about not having boundaries, whereas the frugal FIRE has all these boundaries and the minimalist has all these boundaries. The piffy tends to not have those boundaries, and therefore he's more of a possibility thinker, strategist, enterprising type of person that is able to achieve material aspects of pleasing his family and himself, and yet at the same time be able to also achieve fulfillment in life, satisfaction in life. So this is not the lifestyle of the rich and famous, in the sense that there's no regard with how much we spend. Instead of taking the subway, we just blow $30, $40 on taxis all day long, because that provides no fulfillment and satisfaction. So the piffy achieves all the material things that he does of a person that has a higher status of wealth, but he can also be a multimillionaire and achieve satisfaction on a daily basis. He can have the challenges of somebody that plays you know, professional chess, and therefore has a reason to get out of bed every morning if he's a multimillionaire and he's excited about life. If these three different people were playing sports, the minimalist would be playing badminton, the frugalist would be playing volleyball, and the piffy or piffier would be, as I said, a professional chess player or a professional football or baseball player. And that is my 2 cents on living the good life, because that's what I've been doing. Actually, I should tell you that I've been a piffy for over 30 years. I started out as a frugalist in my 20s. I started out on a FIRE program in my early 20s, and I morphed into a piffy and have been piffy ever since my mid-20s. Remember what a piffy is. It's a professional, industrious frugalist, financially independent, and also early retired. Piffy. If you like the video, you know what to do. Share it on social media. Thank you for staying with me. Have a wonderful day.